Hi everyone, I am live on LinkedIn as an experiment. I'm John Espirian, the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd. Thanks to all of you who are joining us right now. I'm hoping that some questions are going to come in so that I can answer them for you live. I run Espresso Plus, which is a community for small business owners and solopreneurs who need some ongoing support with their LinkedIn. And I run sessions like this a couple of times per month. So let's get some questions answered. I'm going to go to my banners and let's pop something up on the screen. So while I wait for live questions to come in, I've got some really common stuff that gets asked all the time. So I'm going to go through that for you now. I recently did a new LinkedIn newsletter about common questions that I get asked about. So here we go. So where do I start on LinkedIn? Advice here is always the same. Your profile is really the place that you want to build out first before you get involved in any of the advanced things that are going on LinkedIn. So you need to fill out all of the fields of your profile. That stuff should be basic enough. You know, you need a profile photo, you need a headline in place, you need something in your about statement, but the place to focus most really is your professional headline, which can be up to 220 characters in length. But when I was a copywriter, I never used to fill all of that space. I would always write something much shorter than that, usually aiming for between 120 and 150 characters. Of those characters, the first 40 are the most important because they're what will be visible on every single view of LinkedIn. Whether you're on desktop or on mobile, if you're posting, if you're commenting, that the first 40 characters of your headline are super, super important. So the challenge for you is to come up with something that is interesting and differentiated, but also clear about what your business does. So that's the thing that you really need to work on, because that first part of the headline is going to carry all around LinkedIn. So with your name, your photo, and the first part of your headline, that's how you're going to make a good impression. But you need to fill out the rest of your profile, and you need to include in that your about statement, which is, imagine like an extended version of your headline. So whereas your headline is 220 characters, your about statement is going to be 2,600 characters, about 400, 500 words. And that's your chance to really make your pitch about what you're all about. What is your product or service trying to do? Who's it trying to do it for? What does an engagement with you look like? These are the things you want to fill out so that if anyone ever does any due diligence, you know, if they want to look you up and see what you're all about, this is where they're going to look. So start with those things about your profile before you move on to start posting or commenting or anything like that. Got a couple of comments coming in, so let's say hello to a few people. Tina is here. Thank you for joining us, Tina. I'm going to be on Tina's live next week, and she's much more used to running these things than I am. So nice to see her here. Mike is here. Good morning from New York. Okay, and we've got a question from someone, I'm not sure who that is, but you're asking how often should we update our profiles? Good question. When it comes to your headline, a big mistake that I see people making is that they just update their headline too often, sometimes once a week or something, and that's never long enough to work out whether it's effective. So in terms of a general sweep of your profile, making sure your headline, about, and experience sections are all up to date, that, you know, all your certifications are up to date, I probably look to do that once every 6 months. But you need some focus attention when you're getting started, and finding the right headline is not easy. I've written a whole book about getting your content DNA correct, so you can find out more about it in there. But once you hit upon the right headline, you'll start to get people echoing it back to you. And if you can get to that point, then you might not need to edit the headline very often. I use Relentlessly Helpful LinkedIn Nerd, and I've used that for a long time now, and that's kind of what I'm known for. So I wouldn't be looking to change that very often. Okay, and Varsha says, good to see you. Oh yes, the headline does bring a huge shift to one's profile and presence. I found lots of people in my community have, you know, once they've hit upon their headline, it really changes the way that their profile is seen by others. It's just massively important. Let's go to see what other questions I've got lined up that I get asked all the time. So about visibility on LinkedIn. So although, your profile is really important as your kind of home base, but the way that you really get seen on LinkedIn is to engage with other people's content, and specifically through comments. So there's loads of ways that you can engage. You can share posts, and you can react to posts, and you can send posts to people through direct messages. But probably the most important engagement action is commenting. So even if you're not at the point where you're going to post your own material, if you can go and find relevant conversations that are pertinent to your industry, where you've got some life experience, you've worked in that role, or you've done a project like that, you've got something interesting to say that might help someone. If you can leave a long, thoughtful, supportive comment, that content is going to accelerate your visibility to people who've never heard of you before, but who were following the person whose post it was. So the ideal situation, I suppose, is if you can find someone who already has a large and engaged network, and they're writing something that you know about, and you've discovered that person because maybe a colleague's mentioned them to you, or you've discovered them using a hashtag that is relevant to your industry. If you can go and find posts like that and wait for those people to post their content, and then go and leave a thoughtful, supportive, lengthy comment, then lots of people in your second and third line networks will see that, and it's just a great way of being seen. Compare that with doing your own posts when you've got almost no followers. Well, no one's going to see that content. If you took that content and turned it into a series of comments on other posts, you're much more likely to get good visibility. So commenting is a great way of getting visibility. And also, if you comment on other people's posts before trying to post anything of your own, LinkedIn's algorithm is such that it will want to promote your content back to those people, and therefore you'll start appearing in more people's feeds. Okay, let's look at some other questions that have come in. Okay, that was Joe Mortimer. Thank you, Joe, for that question. Naeem is here and asks, is the open to work feature effective for job seekers? I've never really counseled anyone on using that feature myself, because I tend to work for solopreneurs and small business owners who wouldn't use that feature. But I believe that recruiters find it useful. You can make the open to work frame, which is, it's the green swash of color that goes around your profile photo. You don't have to show that to the world. You can turn it on such that it's visible only to recruiters, who are the people that you would actually be looking to target in this case. But the rest of the world don't see it, because there's some argument that would say, if you see that, maybe it looks a little bit desperate. So if I were to use it, I would probably turn it on, but make it visible only to recruiters. Okay, Varsha is asking, why is it important to update each section? Well, each section of your LinkedIn profile has a discoverability potential, let's say. So if you're using the right keywords and someone is doing a search for relevant profiles, then if your section is not up to date, it relates to a previous job that you've done, or it's not using the latest keywords that people are searching on now, then that reduces your chances of being found. So it's just a case of, trying to be up to date as much as possible. These are all marginal gains. Even if you didn't update your profile very often, if you're really active in commenting on other people's stuff and DMing loads of people, posting really valuable content, then in that case, it's not really going to matter so much. Okay, what other questions do we have? Here's a really common one. Do I need LinkedIn Premium? The analogy I make here is that LinkedIn Premium is, people upgrade to it. They pay a monthly or a yearly subscription and feel that, maybe that's going to solve all of their problems. And it isn't really. Very often people don't know how to use the free version of LinkedIn well. I was on the free version of LinkedIn up to a couple of years ago, and I had 34,000 followers at the time. So that's without paying LinkedIn a penny. And the only reason I upgraded to LinkedIn is because I was doing a training session once, and one of my clients in a webinar was saying to another person on the call, why should we trust this guy when he doesn't even have a premium subscription? And I thought, if that's potentially putting off one person, it might be potentially putting off loads of other clients. And so as someone who is specializing in LinkedIn, it kind of makes sense that I should have a gold badge for myself. But in terms of the feature set, I mean, LinkedIn Premium gives you advanced opportunities, I suppose, to search through the platform, because the free version is limited on that. If you do loads and loads of searches, you probably will end up getting restricted by LinkedIn, whereas that doesn't really happen with LinkedIn Premium. Premium allows you to reach out to anyone on the network, because you have these things called in-mails, which are like premium messages that you can send to any person, and you have an allocation of those per month. So on Business Premium, you get 15 of those per month. But do you really need that? I mean, you can send an invitation to connect and put a message in it to pretty much anyone on the platform. You can interact with people through the comments. That's a free way of messaging them. If you're attending the same event as someone, or even in the same group as someone, you can also message them for free. So having premium for that reason isn't necessary, really. Another feature that some of the more busy accounts use is that they have the away message, which is a premium only feature. So that is, if someone messages you and you're connected with them, you can send back a message that maybe points them to a resource. You say that you're away on holiday, I'll get back to you. That is good, but it would be even better if that would go back to everyone who messages you, not just your first connections. And also with LinkedIn Premium, you will get access to LinkedIn Learning. I've been through several LinkedIn Learning courses. The quality is patchy, I've found, but some people really rave about it. So that alone might be worth the subscription. But I make the analogy of a family car. You know, make sure that you can drive the family car, which is the free version of LinkedIn, well, before you upgrade to the sports car, which is LinkedIn Premium, or even Sales Navigator, which is a further enhancement, but even more expensive. Okay, let's see what other comments we have. Okay, so Tina is saying, open to work is very useful for job seekers. You can privately indicate to recruiters your preferences, job titles, different locations. Yeah, that pretty much echoes what I was saying. So thank you for confirming that, Tina. Okay, if you share news articles, should you write a summary or personal insight? Should we combine multiple sources when discussing a topic? Is this a good method for gaining impressions and engagement? Right, okay, so there's quite a bit to unpack there. If you're going to share anything on the platform, just getting a link and just popping it into a post and sharing that's not great practice. You know, I could probably have found that myself by Googling, or maybe seeing it on other social media. What I want to know is, what are your thoughts on this? What insights can you draw from it? And if you can, yes, marry two different sets of information together to come up with some new insight, then I'll see you as a more interesting and memorable person. So yes, I would always, if I were to share a link, I'd always try and share my thoughts to go along with it. In terms of the algorithm, this is one of the questions I was going to get to, actually, so I might as well just include that now, about links in posts and comments. And I've written a newsletter about this recently. Wherever possible, try to provide information so that people can consume it where they are without having to click away from LinkedIn. That's what LinkedIn's going to want. They're running the party. They don't want you sending people through the exit door to some other resource from which they might not come back. So you've got 3,000 characters to play with in a short form LinkedIn post. Use those 3,000 characters rather than including a link externally. There will be times where you just have to, because, for example, you've set up an external webinar, you need people to sign up to something, or you need people to fill in a form, or there's an end game where you want them to sign up to a mailing list to get a PDF, and you can't do those transactions unless they're doing it through your website, in which case it makes sense that you'd push them out to a third-party site. But use them sparingly, because the latest evidence I've seen from Richard van der Blom's regular algorithm report is that if you put links in posts, they will get something like between 55 and 60% less visibility compared with a text-only post or an image post. So that means you really shouldn't be using links in every post. It's not good form. Now, some people would say, should I put the link in the post or should I put it in the comments? So assuming that you have decided, okay, I'm definitely going to use a link, where should you put it? And there's different schools of thought about this. On balance, I favor putting the link inside the post, because doing so just makes it easier to see that there is a link to click. It will usually generate a thumbnail preview. So you'll see hopefully a nicely formatted image to accompany the link with a nice big click area to get people to click through to whatever the resource is. But if you put the link in the comments, then you think, okay, well, the post might not be penalized because it doesn't contain a link. But the visibility of that link in the comments is unclear, because if there's loads of comments, then maybe that link in the post gets buried in all of the noise. It used to be the case that LinkedIn had a pinned comments feature that was around for only a short period in 2022, and then they decided to take it away. When pinned comments were a thing, then content creators were pinning their own comment and putting the link in there, and that kind of solved the problem quite nicely. But that feature was only around for a few months and was then taken away. Also, if the post is ever shared, then that link isn't going to carry through because it's in the comments rather than in the post that was being shared. So there's pros and cons. There's nothing really optimal that I can suggest. I mean, you could try using the relatively new embedded interactive link feature, which is where if you post an image or a video on the mobile app, you can embed a link into that. And that will probably be penalized less than a normal link post would be. But even then, that means that you've got to make your post through mobile, and maybe you don't want to do that. I certainly don't. I find it quite fiddly to do it, and I wouldn't bother making the effort just to make the post just so I can include the link. It's easier for me to just include the link from desktop. So I put my links in the post and try to avoid doing them too often. Okay, let's see if we've got anything else coming in. Right. Okay, Auxa. Are there any words that LinkedIn algorithm filters posts by? I haven't done enough testing on that to know whether this is true. I mean, it has been suggested that if you're asking people to, here's an example. One trope that used to happen was that instead of doing a poll post, people would say, you can vote by clicking the colored emoji buttons. And so you click like if you want this, or click celebrate if you want that. And LinkedIn has said that, anything that asks people to click specific reaction buttons would be downplayed by the algorithm. That kind of makes sense because you're turning it into a bit of a game. There may be some suggestion that if you're specifically asking people to follow something or specifically asking people to comment, maybe that could downplay the visibility of that content. But I think you'd need a lot of data to be able to work out whether there was a positive or negative, more likely negative effect of doing that. So I don't think so. Perhaps, if you're using words that often get trapped as spam elsewhere, which I probably don't need to repeat, then that might reduce the visibility of that content. Because I must say, I'm just thinking about a couple of examples, and I don't tend to see that content in my feed. I might get spammed through messages in my DMs, but I don't see very much of that in my feed, which suggests that LinkedIn's probably quite good at filtering that content out. Phil says, agree with you, John. Links in the post are fine. I don't really see much or any penalization effect. I'm not sure anyone's got any reliable evidence for that. I mean, definitely before 2020, it used to be the case. If you put a link in the post, you're pretty much guaranteed not to get any visibility. So I did some tests before that change of the algorithm in early 2020. After the change, my posts that contained links were getting something like, I think it was 20 times more visibility. So there was definitely a change of the algorithm around then. But since then, I think, again, just try and avoid them unless they're absolutely necessary. If they're necessary, don't beat yourself up. Just include them if needs be. Melanie says, I've never identified anyone using the link I've put in a photo. Half the people in my network probably doesn't even realize it's clickable. Yeah, I mean, I think, so this is about the embedded hyperactive, interactive link feature on mobile for images and videos. If you're going to do it, one little tip here is that you can pinch and zoom to make that little white rectangular link item bigger on the screen, and you can actually twist it as well, so it overlays over other things, and hopefully that would draw people's attention. You don't want to take people's attention away too much from whatever else is going on in the image or the video, but that might be a way of getting around it, or to actually put in the words of the link, click here, and people will then hopefully realize that it actually does something. Let's see if there's anything more. Christelle is here. My understanding is that visibility is higher when posting from a personal account than a company page. Any value in posting from company page and then reposting from a personal account? Or as a solopreneur, would you recommend not to bother with company pages? Well, yeah, my company page has been around for years, and it's run solely by me, as is my personal profile, and my personal profile has 20 times as many followers as my company page does. I think that's because people want to interact with a real person rather than a logo, even if they can tell that logo is actually being run by a single person's account. So company pages are useful for a number of reasons. For one, you'll get additional branding in the top card of your LinkedIn personal profile, because you'll associate it with your company page, and you can put your logo on that. That alone is a good reason to create a company page. You'll get a listing in Google, so someone might discover your company page through Google and then click through to see who the employee is and then discover your personal profile. So it's a route for discovery. If you're ever going to advertise on LinkedIn, you need a company page to do that. You can't advertise solely through a LinkedIn personal page. So there are reasons to have one, but visibility of content probably isn't one. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that I think one of the big downsides of company pages is that traditionally they haven't allowed you to take relationships forward by having direct messages. Because what you want is an optimized profile that leads to some great content where people will comment, and ultimately you'll move those people onto the direct messages so you can actually transact some business. Because all of my business really happens in the DMs. That last bit of moving people into the DMs, you can't do on company pages, or at least you couldn't do until now, because LinkedIn has started to roll out a messaging feature for company pages that have a single administrator. So I don't have that feature yet, but a number of my friends do have it, and I've tested it with them, and it seems to work really, really well. So if that rolls out to everyone, which I've heard that it's rolling out in the coming month, then it means that you can keep those relationships going through your company page, and maybe that changes the value proposition of companies. But in terms of visibility in the feed, personal posts probably are the way forward. Okay, let's see if anything else has come in. I've seen tons of new polls from companies and publishers. Is polling a good method for targeted audience, and how should it be used? Well, it was. If we go back to when polls first launched, they were just getting ridiculous levels of visibility. Every poll seemed to have hundreds and hundreds of votes. In the past year, that's really fallen off a cliff. I tend not to use polls. I got quite tired of seeing them in my feed, and I didn't want to foist those up on my audience. I think if you've got a useful question to ask, if you've got a well-framed question with a good answer set, they're good for gathering intelligence about your audience. Like, for example, if you're planning to launch a new or tweaked product or service, and you can get people to, answer about what they'd be willing to pay, a pay range that they'd be willing to invest in for a particular service, you can see who's voted. So you've got a ready-made list of people who might be interested. That's a great reason for doing a poll. Now, you might only get a few votes, but that might be a few solid customers that you get off the back of it. So in that case, it's worthwhile. What I don't like is kind of these vacuous polls that ask something just for the purposes of visibility and engagement. Do you like tea or coffee? That doesn't really move us forward in the conversation. So I don't really like stuff like that. And personally, I don't actually use polls anymore. Okay, so Phil says, to Christelle's question, we've decided not to spend the time working on our company page, but have a visual post there asking people to follow my partner and myself instead. So that's a good point, Phil. So you can pin a post to the top of your company page. So even if you don't post content very often, you should at least put your flagship piece of content at the top pinned of your company page. So if anyone does stumble across it doing their due diligence, they can see the one thing that you'd really want them to know. And then maybe in that post or in another post or even in the banner of the company page, you could just point out, look, if you want the latest updates, maybe go and follow this hashtag and follow me. My personal profile is here. So it's like a signposting system. So yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Stacy asks, do repurposed or reused posts get penalized by the algorithm? Repurposing is perfectly fine. I should do it more often myself. So if you put out something that's been popular in the past, then with minor tweaks, you could put that content out again and probably help it reach, a new audience or maybe even the same audience who didn't get a chance to see it the first time. Because you've got to remember that only a very small proportion of the people who've opted in to follow you will actually see any one given piece of content. It's not like you're going to get 100% blanket coverage. I did an experiment a while ago and found that even my most engaged followers at the time, admittedly, this was a couple of years ago, so the algorithm might have changed in this respect, but even my most engaged followers were seeing only about 60% of my content in my feed. Now, since then, we've introduced the bell feature so that people can go to your profile, follow you, and then click the bell, and that should give them notifications every time you post something. I've seen times where even that hasn't actually surfaced absolutely every piece of content that I've put out. So don't rely on that. What you shouldn't do is go and use the reshare or repost feature on your own posts. And in fact, personally, I don't use it on other people's posts either. I would, if I was going to try to rebroadcast someone else's ideas, I would probably write a whole new post and maybe link back to the original just to give the person credit, but not to use the reshare or repost feature. And if you do it on your own, I've only tested that briefly, but it was disastrous. I mean, I think one post I reposted got 39 views, and my average is several thousand views. So that was a huge differential. And I said, right, I'm never doing that again. So don't repost your own content with the buttons inside LinkedIn, but by all means, riff on the content, repeat it. And maybe you could do that every few months to help your content stretch further. I suppose one of the tip around this is if you've done something as, let's say, a text-only post and it went down pretty well, maybe you could respin exactly that same idea a month or two later as a document post or as a video. Or as a long form article or newsletter. So you're covering all the bases of the way that people consume content. Some people like short form, some people like video, some people like scrolling through documents. Other people like, reading the long form newsletters. So if you can give it to people in every single format, often people need to hear the same message over and over again. That would probably be a good idea. Okay. Nawal says how to use LinkedIn and how do you search the jobs on this website? Well, yeah, I mean, there's loads of features for searching on LinkedIn, and often people don't realize that there are so many filters. You can go and type in a keyword, and then you can narrow it down to, is it a person you're looking for, or is it posts you're looking for, or is it something about companies that you're looking for? And then you can add further filters on top of that. I can't profess to be a job search expert, but I'm going to be online live with Tina next week, who very much is. Perhaps she can provide some tips on that. Phil is asking whether anyone uses Sales Navigator. I must admit that I don't myself. I've heard loads of good things about it. I can't really justify the investment because LinkedIn on the premium version is working well enough for me. But again, I'm sure some commenters will share their experience. I've heard some people just making loads of money off the back of identifying warm leads and having a clean feed that isn't full of ads and isn't full of referred material from other people. It's just the people that you've identified. So that on its own might be worth the investment of whatever it is per month. Okay, so another LinkedIn user says, what's the best practice for featured posts on your profile? I think just try and promote whatever your flagship product or service is. And in the featured space, you can add loads of items to your featured panel that sits at the top of your profile, but they do scroll off the screen pretty quickly. On mobile, you're probably only going to be able to see one of those before it tails off. On desktop, you might see sort of 2.5 posts worth of content. I recommend people try and include something that has your face on it, so that people they're more likely to click through to faces. And especially if it's a little snippet from an interview or something that shows you animated in some way, I think that helps to build trust with people, and it just makes you infinitely more approachable. So whatever the most important piece of content is should sit on the left side of the featured items, because that's what's going to be seen first. And for the people who see it on desktop, they see the first 2 or so. Make sure that your most important stuff is there. Try and keep it up to date. Try and include your face if you can, and if you've got a video clip, that's really the best way to go. Okay, Tatiana says she's a public speaking and communications coach and recently won a teaching award from a university where I teach at. Congratulations. I'd like to share this award. How do you suggest going about it? Well, there is a section of your profile where you can show your licenses and certifications, but that's buried quite far down. And I think only the people who are doing their due diligence are actually going to, they're really going to do their research and find out about that. So if you want people to see it, you're probably going to need to do a post about it. Now, you could do a little short video, sort of between 30 and 60 seconds is probably optimal at the moment on LinkedIn. Or you could do an image post. Image posts with, especially selfie posts, so long as you don't overdo it and so long as it's in some way relevant to what you want to be known for, I think it's cool to include them. Where I don't like them is where people just go back to the well every time, so that every post is a selfie post, or the selfie has got absolutely nothing to do with the content of the post or with what the person wants to be known for. I think in those cases, it feels to me a little bit cynical, and I tend to scroll on by when I see that. But if I haven't seen someone's selfie post before and it's relevant, I don't see any problem with that at all. We've already actually gone over half an hour, which is all I was planning to be here for. But if the questions keep coming in, I'm happy to stick around and answer a few more. I will go back to one of my pre-made ones, which is about creator mode. This gets asked all the time. So creator mode is not just one feature, but actually it's like a little family of features that you can turn on your LinkedIn profile. The most obvious thing that it does is it changes your connect button to a follow button. So if someone who is not connected with you visits your LinkedIn profile, they'll see a follow button instead of a connect button. So the idea is that it helps to build your followers more quickly. If you're someone who is regularly creating content, and if you already have a critical mass of connections, I would usually aim for at least 1,000, then turning on creator mode should at least slightly increase the speed of growth on the platform. I switched to what I called follow first mode before creator mode came around. And my follower count really increased quite a lot when doing that. I did a bit of testing when creator mode launched, and found that my content got slightly better visibility with creator mode on versus off, but I probably didn't have enough data to be absolutely sure of that. The key thing for me is that when creator mode is on, you'll get access to features that you wouldn't otherwise have if creator mode was off. So you can give people an external follow button that you can put on your website that prompts people to follow you when they click it, for example. That's not something you can do if creator mode is turned off. You get access to LinkedIn's newsletters, which is the long form subscription-based article system. You get access to LinkedIn Live. You can get some of these things without creator mode being turned on, but basically having creator mode turned on increases your chances of getting them, and also increases your chances of getting whatever new features LinkedIn implements first. It looks as though that they're really trying to build content for creator users on LinkedIn. So having that feature turned on is a good idea. They have actually bucked the trend of that with a new feature that I don't have yet, but there's a new button for premium members, so that you can put a button in the top panel that lets you link back to your website. So you may know that creator mode users can also link to a website or any other resource on the internet. Premium users will be able to have that as a button, which is maybe a little bit more visible. So that's a rare departure for LinkedIn to make a feature that's specifically for premium users. Okay, let's go for one more question. This is from DB, who's a member of my Espresso Plus community. Nice to see you, DB. What is your point of view on corporate web links added as media within the work experience. The work experience section is the most CV-like component of your LinkedIn profile. And therefore, in the days when I used to rewrite profiles for clients, I don't do that anymore. But when I did, that's the bit that I probably paid least attention to. I think the further up your profile you go, so banner, photo, headline, profile video, audio description, about statement, featured section, all of that stuff is near the top of your profile. If you haven't got someone's attention and showed your value proposition in that space, it almost doesn't matter what's coming further down. That's only really, the further down you go, it's the more it is for people who are doing their due diligence. Having said that, if you're going to spend any time developing your experience section, just writing 1 or 2 lines of text that detail the tasks that you did at a certain job is a bit boring. You can spice up that content by adding media links, and they appear as rich media embeds. You could even link to videos and so forth. So so long as it's not going to take you loads and loads of time, bearing in mind that not many people are actually going to go and look at those resources, I think on balance I probably would rather have that section fully filled out than not. But don't lose sleep over it. Focus much more on the top of your profile. Okay, I think that's all I'm going to cover for today in terms of questions. As I said at the start, I do, I cover live Q&As. I answer people's questions on LinkedIn through Zoom in my community. We're doing that at least a couple of times each month. So if you're interested in finding out more about Espresso Plus, the community, go to jesp.me/join. All of the information is there about what you get. And if you have any questions, just let me know about that. And that will do for this experimental broadcast to LinkedIn Live and YouTube. I hope you found that interesting. Any questions at all, just DM me anytime. All I ask is that people are polite, and there's a good chance that I've probably written a blog or done a video about the question that you've got. So drop me a line and I'll try and help you. And depending on how well the comments were received for this one, maybe I'll be back sometime soon to do another session. Thanks for watching.